Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. New York's harbor is dominated by a statue calling for strangers to come. Yet so many cry for higher fences to keep people out. Immigration arouses passions. Debra Cooper, an attorney who helps in this field, can tell us some of the results. How did you get involved in this? You have really become, I think you're my expert.
Oh, thank you.
But how did this all happen?
Well, I've been involved in nonprofit and human rights work for a while. For a long time, I've sort of had a notion of wanting to visit asylum seekers that are detained, and I didn't know much about it. And then I came across a program called Sojourners, Sojourners Detention Visitor Project, which is run through the Riverside Church in Manhattan, although it's not a religious program. And they provide transportation and training and contacts. They find out about the detainees that want visitors at an immigration detention center in Elizabeth, New Jersey. So I went to a training about a year and a half ago and started visiting, and I've been doing it more or less every 2 weeks since then.
I know. I was trying to make a date with you for something in the morning on a Saturday, and you said, I can't come, I'm going over there. What does the detention center look like?
Well, it looks like what I believe it used to be, which is essentially, I think, a cargo warehouse. It's a big, windowless, concrete building, one story, I believe, in the midst, near Newark Airport, in the midst of many other warehouses, which I don't know what they're...
The port of Newark in New Jersey, isn't it?
It's in Elizabeth, but which I guess is near there. And so you'd never know that there are actually people housed there to drive by it. And you go in through several locked and steel sliding doors, and you get processed through with your ID and everything, and give the name and the alien number, which is the number assigned to each person that's a detained immigrant. And then you go in and you visit with them for an hour, and then you leave.
And you can't see where they live.
Can't see anything. No, you can't. All we see is the actual visitor area.
So it's like a prison.
It's like a prison.
But
it seems like a prison.
It's not supposed to be a prison.
Well, the people that are there are, they're not criminals. They're not accused of any crime. They're not convicted of any crime. They're just there. They're accused of violating immigration rules.
But that's a civil
offense. Which is a civil offense, exactly.
Yeah.
And the people that are there, have not exhausted their legal remedies. Some haven't even started, but they're just automatically detained asylum seekers, when they come into the airport, if they don't have their papers organized, which I think you would expect people that are seeking asylum not to have, because they likely escaped under harsh circumstances.
Right. So are you basically seeing people who are seeking asylum?
Yes.
Not for other reasons?
No, there are people there that have been picked up in raids and various other things, but we visit mainly asylum seekers.
But there are centers like this all over the country.
Yeah, as far as I understand, I think there are about 400 facilities used. I'm not sure how that breaks down in terms of this sort of detention center specifically for immigration detainees. Some people are also put in beds in county jails and local jails, mixed among the criminal.
Which is a result of a new kind of thing. I mean, the Immigration Services has now been put into Homeland Security.
Right.
And Homeland Security, my understanding is, has signed agreements with, I think it's like 57 localities, where in those localities they combine, as you said, immigration cases with criminal cases. I mean, it's just...
Right.
And actually there was just in the news recently a story about a pregnant woman, you remember, down south, who was arrested because she was driving some funny way, and they stopped her and she didn't have a license because immigrants can't get licenses there. And they put her in jail, and she was pregnant, about ready to give birth, and she did give birth. They took her to the hospital. They chained her to the bed. Then they took her back, and they wouldn't give her a breast pump, so it was very painful, and she was infected because they took the baby into foster care. I mean, that is the kind of thing that happens when you leave that jurisdiction to a local community.
Right, and I think that the medical care for immigration detainees is, from all accounts, poor to non-existent. There's a lot of, there are a lot of anecdotal accounts. There's now been some more research, investigative reporting and actual research by the Department of Homeland Security. I think the Inspector General, they did a study last year and found that the medical care is sorely lacking. And in fact, I learned yesterday that Senator Menendez of New Jersey actually visited the Elizabeth Detention Center yesterday and spoke to several detainees. And he has a bill that he's introduced in the Senate, which is also being considered in the House to greatly improve the medical care of immigration detainees. But of course, I mean, it's wonderful that he's doing it. And unfortunately, legislation is a long process. So
it's his immigration thing. I think there's how many people have died in the immigration, who've been detained. It's very high.
Oh, 70 something, I think. I don't know.
But all of these things are really violations of the international.
Yeah.
What is it of international?
International human rights laws and treaties. Yeah, I mean, people being detained without due process. They don't have any. They have no right to legal counsel. Sometimes they can find it, but with great difficulty. The lawyers there's obviously not much money in that. So it's a sacrifice and a great gesture for private attorneys to be willing to represent detainees. Then there's sort of a network of people who will do it pro bono for free, but it's very difficult when people are in detention. They get here from another country and they don't necessarily speak English and they're seeking asylum to even know where to turn first, which is one of the things that we're able to help with in the Sojourners program. As visitors, we can talk to people, find out who's there, or if the people that we're talking to need attorneys and try to help them just sort of bridge that.
The Sojourner program isn't just for people seeking asylum.
It is primarily, because what we try to do is provide company, visitors, friendship for people who are in detention who don't really have any friends or family in the area. We'll visit anybody who wants a visitor, but oftentimes I think people who have been in this country already and are picked up have families that visit them. Right. Not that it makes the detention any better, but people that come here seeking asylum from far away don't know anybody here, and then they're completely isolated. So we try to bridge that.
So your people tend to be people who came here as individuals? Yeah. And where do they come from?
All over the world, all over Africa, Asia, Latin America, really all over.
And why are they seeking asylum?
I suppose for the usual reasons people seek asylum, whether it's political persecution or a fear of, various customs such as female genital mutilation, or, there are a whole host of issues why people are, afraid of either being persecuted in their own countries or have been persecuted, and so they find some way to escape, which I can never fathom how they even manage to do that. And they get here hoping for safety and freedom, and these days are pretty much immediately put into detention.
And seeking asylum does not include people from South America, for instance, who've come across the border to seek a job.
Not necessarily. I mean, I suppose there could be circumstances where people would come here seeking a job and for whatever reason, if they're
I'm just trying to differentiate within it that there seems to be a difference between people who are trying to escape some kind of
tyranny. It's not generally people who just come here for economic reasons because they're trying to get a better job and seek a better life. It's specifically people who are escaping from the persecution or fear of persecution, whether it's political or because of their gender or sexual orientation, or because of any number of reasons in their home country, and they somehow escape and come here.
Do all the people you see speak English?
No.
So how do you converse with them?
We try to find people who speak the languages that they speak, at least somewhat, and if we can't, we try to manage as best we can.
Does the facility doesn't have interpreters?
No, they don't. The facility doesn't do anything to make visiting, necessarily easier, for visitors. I mean, it's basically, you go there and you're sort of on your own. I mean, and there are no contact visits either, other than for lawyers.
I mean, this is all behind?
It's behind glass with a phone like you see on television. Yeah, there's no contact. In fact, even if there are spouses that are detained in the same facility, which there are occasionally, they have no physical contact whatsoever. I think maybe 2 or 3 times a week they have phone conversations, again through the glass, but I don't think they ever have contact visits.
And are there men and women there? Or
there are men and women, yeah, more men.
And have you a clue as to how they live? Do they live in barracks?
Just anecdotally, they're apparently they're housed in what are called dorms, which are, I guess, just big rooms with many beds. I think, at least in the men's dorm, I think there are about 5 or 6 men's dorms and maybe 2 or 3 women's. In Elizabeth, this is just in the Elizabeth Detention Center. I think with the men, some dorms have about 20 men, some have about 40. There are no walls separating the beds or the bathroom facilities or the showers or anything. It's all one big room. I think there's a television, which, I guess I don't know who controls what's on that TV. I think there's one. I think there's a phone, but they basically are locked into this room.
With no windows.
24 hours a day, no windows. They never go outside at Elizabeth ever, never outdoors. What they call outdoor rec is actually, from what I understand, in a large room in the facility that has 1 or 2 small skylights, which are open and don't have windows. So when it rains, they can't use that room either.
So they have no rights? Is that what the problem is? So nobody can really sue and say this is inhumane?
I mean, there have been many advocacy groups and there still are, that work on these issues that are trying to, reform the laws to make them better, and to, when there are individual cases, I guess, that are particularly egregious, they try to resolve those issues.
There is one umbrella organization in Washington. What's it called?
There's an organization called the Detention Watch Network, which is an umbrella organization of whose members are individuals and many other organizations, mostly nonprofit organizations, who work on these issues, issues of immigration detention and other issues related to immigration.
They range from the ACLU to a congregation at some place, or Sojourners,
some religious
or something.
Sojourners, the Women's Commission, the IRC.
And they have a website so people can go and see it. Yeah, and it's very interesting, and it's filled with really horrifying facts. Why are people detained so long?
Well, in 1996, the immigration laws were made much more stringent, and one of the things the immigration laws are very, very lengthy and complex, and I don't know anywhere near all the details. But one of the things that happened in 1996 when they changed the immigration laws was they expanded the definition of what's called an aggravated felony, which is basically, although it uses the word felony, it's not actually what we think of as in our laws as a felony, a really serious crime. An aggravated felony in immigration law is basically any violation. It can be, shoplifting or I don't know if it goes so far as jaywalking, but anything from that to more serious crimes. And any immigrant, if they're not a citizen, but even if they're a legal resident or an undocumented immigrant, if they've had any conviction at all in the past, even 10, 20, 30 years ago, whatever, that falls into this definition of aggravated felony. If they're arrested or found to have violated their immigration status for whatever reason, there's mandatory detention required. If they have any of these so-called aggravated felonies in their past. Also, if people come here seeking asylum, they're immediately...
It's detention until they have a hearing, right?
Well, it's detention until they have a hearing. Often, many times, they lose, in their initial hearing, and then they're still detained until, if they have a lawyer to appeal or if they manage to do it on their own.
And then otherwise they're deported.
Usually they're deported. Occasionally they'll be granted asylum. There are situations where they can be released on parole or on bond. That's very rare.
I think I've read that I think it's something like 57% of the immigration violations, people who have somehow are detained, and the rest of them are released in different circumstances with, things, detention, things that you put on an ankle so you know where they are,
Yeah.
or something like that.
I don't know what the percentages are. I know I understand that it varies greatly
Yeah.
from
Region to region.
location to state to
Now,
state.
one of the reasons, though, that they don't have hearings is that I think in 1996 or maybe a little later, they did a study of the judges, and they were supposed to, when the legislation was passed, the question was, do we have enough judges to have the hearings necessary to make the system work? And the Justice Department, Ashcroft, said that they did have, and they were recruiting more. But what happened was their recruitment got caught up in this whole scandal in the Justice Department about who they're recruiting. I mean, why do you like President Bush,
Right.
and what do you think about abortion? And so instead of adding judges, they've lost them. And I read someplace that there are 27 vacancies in the country, so they can't even have and at the same time that they've lost judges, they've doubled their Border Patrol work.
Right, a lot more money into
and
that.
so then some of those people land up in the detention facilities also. So it's a totally overloaded system and a totally inadequate system.
Yeah,
It's
and very random too. I mean, there are some immigration judges that have much higher rates of granting asylum or releasing people, pending their hearings on parole, and then there are some that have just really appalling ones and virtually release nobody unless they're deported.
Does the Department of Health go into this facility to see if it's up to standards?
I think that it.
I wonder.
There are inspections occasionally. It's not. I think it's all sort of done within the Department of
DHS
Homeland
within,
Security,
yeah.
right? And also another problem is that the rules that govern the conditions in detention centers, including medical care, are just guidelines. They're not laws. So there's no real accountability.
And some of the detention centers, we haven't said this, are privately run and are contracted with the government.
Right, many are.
And so they're making a lot of money.
Right, exactly. I think it's something like $95 a day.
Yeah, it's $95 a day, I think, to keep someone in detention, and it's something like $19 a day to, keep them under with a bracelet that keeps their whereabouts.
Yeah, it's much less expensive.
Yeah.
And the compliance rate, the rate of people who are released on parole, showing up for their hearings as opposed to sort of, disappearing into the ether is very high. I mean, it's about 95%.
Right.
So
it's over $1 billion industry.
Yeah, it's tremendous.
Yeah.
And it seems that people, often aren't released from detention until they have other people to show up to take the beds, because otherwise, there's...
Right. And then not only that, when they decide to deport them, they fly people out, and that's also contracted out with airplanes. We spent a lot of time on the border in Arizona when my husband was writing a book about this young Mexican who crossed the border. And we were in Tucson and stopped at a local restaurant on one of the highways, and there were two big buses, chartered buses, filled with people they were taking back to Mexico. But where they were taking them was to the airport, where they had huge planes that they were paying for to fly them back to Mexico. I mean, it
Instead
was
of just taking them in the bus across.
Yeah, well, it's just a crazy kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that when they put immigration into the Department of into the Department of Homeland Security, you can see my city, Homeless Services. It's the same. When they put that department into Homeland Security, that was the mixing of the whole thing, and they look at this now as security and
and I think it's gotten a lot worse after September 11th too, with the focus on terrorism. I mean, it's very hard for people to get asylum, and people are detained for months and years on end. It's very difficult, and like I said, it's very random. So and especially if people who are seeking asylum, if they lose their initial asylum hearing, which they often do, it's a tremendous uphill battle to ever win on appeal.
So how do they find somebody to help them with the appeal? Do they go into these hearings without any counsel?
Often, they often do.
So then how do they appeal it? They appeal it themselves?
Sometimes they appeal themselves. Sometimes they're fortunate to have an attorney, often a pro bono one, who is willing to continue to represent them on appeal. It's very rare that they find an attorney, much less a capable, diligent, caring one that actually helps them through the whole process.
So when you get your people call you sometimes?
Yes, they can call, people that are detained can call out, although it's quite expensive. But you can't call in.
Have you ever been in a prison?
No, I haven't.
Because it sounds very much like a prison, except that in prison you really have your own cell. You don't even have to live in a dorm.
Right.
But it's certainly with the phones and the visiting and the this and the that and all the regulations. So though in prison, it's better because you're mandated to go outside and have exercise and all these different things. There are no classes or nothing for anybody to do. What do they do during the day?
They have this 1 hour, this at least in Elizabeth. I mean, again, I'm sure it probably varies a lot from location to location. They have 1 hour a day, I think, of what they call outdoor rec in that room with the skylight. I think there might be another room that's called indoor rec with a ping pong table or something that I don't know how that works. They can go to maybe for another hour.
Can you bring books?
You can't bring anything for them. You can send them books,
Mail,
but only through like an online service. So you're sending it through the service. You can't buy a book in the store, wrap it up, and mail it to them. It has to come from the bookstore, so that it's the bookstore's package. I guess so. Yeah. There's nothing else.
So where do you buy them? I mean,
so
it's like Amazon.
You could buy it online on Amazon or Barnes & Noble and just have it sent to them. Yeah.
And so, I mean, do you become really involved with the people that you're trying to help? You do.
I do, yeah. I mean, I sort of can't help it. I mean, the visitors do to, some to a greater extent, some to a lesser extent.
Do you communicate with their families in the other countries? Can you do that?
If they ask you to, and if you want to, and if if they give you the contact information.
What kind of people do you see? Are they men, women?
The people that I've visited so far have happened to be men. There are a lot more men there. And the times when I've sort of, when somebody I visited has either been released or deported and I need somebody new to visit and have looked for somebody that speaks English, they've just happened to
Are they professional people? What were they doing in the countries when they come?
I don't get the impression that they're professional people. I mean, I think they're maybe, I don't know how to characterize it compared to what we do here. I mean, they're, I guess, workers,
But you're seeing people who are seeking asylum, so somehow, and they were men, so were they involved in in Africa, some of them, the massacres and the tribal wars, or were they political people? Do you know that?
It's hard to tell because you're sort of limited by what the person that you visit tells you. And since it's a sensitive situation and we're really only there to be friends with them and we're not trained therapists or representing them as lawyers or anything, you sort of.
And when you visit somebody in prison, you don't ask them what the crime was.
Right, so I mean, we just, you talk to them and sometimes they'll tell you some things about their situation and, sometimes they don't feel that comfortable. And so, you just sort of listen to them and try to kind of be, just provide friendship and companionship. And then if, sometimes it does go beyond that. I mean, because I'm a lawyer and, and I'm there often, people, just other visitors, family members or other detainees will hear me say something about being a lawyer and they'll come and ask me, if I can represent them or help them find a lawyer. So oftentimes I'll make calls for people just to, like their organizations like Human Rights First and the American Friends Service Committee and New York City Bar Association that help people find pro bono lawyers.
So you've never represented any of them?
I haven't, no, but I've helped some of them find lawyers. So.
Right. They must flock after you.
People just, I think it's just a lack of information and access. People don't really know where to turn.
There's no place to go. There are no booklets handed out.
I think they do get some information, and they're supposed to be a list of phone numbers for lawyers next to the phone in the dorm for them to call. I think that those are there, but again, it's they don't always have access to the phone because if there are 40 people in one dorm and one phone and they can only use it from a certain time in the morning to the evening, and then sometimes they'll call those phone numbers and they'll get voicemail and they don't know what to do. So I'll just it's a lot easier being out here and speaking English well and knowing who to talk to make 5 calls in a day and try to get a hold of somebody.
Does it make you angry?
Yeah, I guess so. It's angry. It makes me angry. It's upsetting. It's kind of, it's just really a shame because I feel really badly when I visit people, and I think, this is my country that I'm really proud of. And I find it hard to understand and explain to them, why we're treating them like that. If people are coming here, looking for freedom, looking for safety, and they're just, they don't have any rights at all, and they're really, they're treated very poorly. So.
It sounds so terrible that it is a shame, isn't it? It's
really horrible.
It's sort of like Guantanamo, only it's brought even closer to our communities.
Yeah, it's really horrible.
No torture, but psychological.
I hope not.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, nobody that I've talked to has mentioned anything like that. But you don't. I mean, we don't. You don't know how people are treated, and we don't get to go
Inside.
into where they live, and it sounds from people that I've spoken to like it's a fairly dull kind of routine, pretty bare bones existence. But I don't I haven't heard stories of that.
Well, Debra, we've come to the end of our talk, and people should look up the website of Detention
The
Watch.
Detention Watch Network, yeah.
And Sojourner also, I think, has a website, and if they're interested, they should volunteer.
Listed under, they're listed under the Riverside Church, and there's
there's
an email address.
Yeah.
I think it's sojourners@riversidechurch.org or the Riverside Church.
Thank you very much, Debra Cooper.
Thanks, Ronnie.
If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.